Well everyone, it's time for us to do a comparison between the Mac Studio that just came out and the M1 iMac and pretty much see which specific Mac you should go and buy. Now this is interesting because these two are kind of different products, but a lot of people may be wondering, should they go up and spend a little bit more money on a Mac Studio or should they save some money and get an iMac? Now, I will definitely tell you, it doesn't really look like a new M1 iMac Pro or one of those models is going to be coming out anytime soon, but there's also been a lot of rumors that something like that could happen, so your best bet is to wait a little bit if you can, even until WWDC, but if not, I'm going to tell you, you can't really make a wrong decision here. Both of these Macs are very powerful, but I will tell you, the Mac Studio is a little bit more deceiving because you will have to spend a little bit more money if you're buying that Mac. You'll have to buy a display, you'll have to buy the Mac, keyboard and the mouse and everything like that. And you also have to buy like the Thunderbolt cable that comes and all that other stuff that kind of comes with buying a display and all that other stuff. But with something like the M1 iMac, the display is built in with the computer. You're getting a very fast computer, but you're getting a really, really good display as well. Now, personally, I think the design of the iMac is good, but I do prefer having a different display associated with it, to be honest. But I will tell you, you do save some money than, buying another display separately with the Mac Studio. Now, pricing wise, the base iMac is $1299. The base Mac Studio is $1999. So there's a $700 difference between these two. But again, with that extra money that you're spending on the Mac Studio, you are getting a much more powerful machine. Now, starting off with the outside, the iMac, the base model M11, has two USB Type-C ports on the back. With the Mac Studio, and that's it. You don't get an SD card, you don't get more. You can spec that out to 4 USB Type-C ports, but that's on the higher end model. With the Mac Studio, you get 2 USB Type-C ports on the front with an SD card, and if you're actually getting the higher end model, you can actually have those as 2 Thunderbolt ports, which is really, really awesome. You're also getting a lot more ports on the back. You're getting 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports, but you can get 6 Thunderbolt 4 ports on the M1 Ultra model. You're getting an HDMI port, you're getting an Ethernet port as well, and you also have that AC adapter too. So if you're somebody who needs a much more powerful machine, the Mac Studio is 1,000,000% the better way to go. You have a much more configurable machine where you can spec it out to exactly what you want it to. With the M1 iMac, you have a lot of the same capability, but it really depends. You're maxed out at 4 USB Type-C ports, and you can always get dongles and stuff. But for having that type of capability built into the Mac Studio itself, that is a really awesome thing. Another thing to keep in mind is that display support. So you can connect, displays for both of these models, but the Mac Studio allows you to connect it to multiple different displays. With the M1 iMac, you can only connect it to one other display. And this is probably one of the biggest complaints I have with the base M1 iMacs. With the M1 MacBook Pros and all those ones don't have those issues. But with the base M1 chipsets, the M1 MacBook Air, M1 Mac Mini, M1, Mac Studio, whatever, M1 iMac, you can only connect it to another display. So with the Mac Mini, you can have 2, which is good, but M1 iMac, you can only connect it to one other display, which is kind of a downside for me, who likes using multiple different machines. With the Mac Studio, you can connect to, I think, like 6 displays or something like that. So there's a lot more capability on the Mac Studio, in my opinion, than on the M1 iMac. Now, chipset-wise and how far you can spec it up to, the M1 iMac, you can get 8-core CPU, you can get 7-core GPUs, and this is for the base model, remember, and you can get up to 16 gigabytes of memory. With the Mac Studio, you can go up to 20-core CPU, up to 64 cores for GPU, and 128 gigabytes of memory inside of it. That is an insane amount of power, and I'm going to definitely tell you, if you are on a super powerful machine, like if you need something that is the most powerful you can buy, it really only makes sense to buy something like a Mac Studio. It's going to support you for so many years, and that extra money you're going to spend is probably going to be worthwhile, but it really depends on your use case. If you're somebody who wants to try out and see if you need something that's more powerful, I would always recommend just buying the cheaper option you have. Not the cheapest option, but the cheaper one if you're looking at 2, in this case the M1 iMac. Buying it, seeing how your use is for a first week or 2, and if you like it and if it holds everything you can, and within that week or 2, I would just recommend just doing everything you can possibly think of. And if it handles everything, then I would recommend keeping it. But if it can't, I would recommend returning it and buying the Mac Studio. In my experience, I've never had any issues with power. In my experience, I've never had any issues with power or speed of my machine or anything. It's always been overheating of the machine, specifically for MacBooks or iMacs. And it's always been, the battery life. In this case, these 2 things plug in, so there's not really that big of an issue there. But these 2 things have kind of a different cooling system within it, but both of these have really big fans inside of them too. So theoretically, these machines shouldn't really overheat that crazy. That's kind of another thing to keep in mind. Now on top of that, in a per use by use cases, it really depends on, again, how much money you have to spend. If you have unlimited money to spend, I would recommend just going for the Mac Studio, getting the best display that you can, and pretty much moving on from there. But there's something about the M1 iMac that is really nice. Just having that display built into the computer makes things a lot easier. It's a 24-inch panel and it's a 4.5K display. I mean, that is a really, really good panel. It's pretty much almost the same thing as the 5K display that I had before, and it is a really good panel. It's a little bit smaller than I would like. I would love this machine to be at like 27 or 32 inches. That'd be great, but still 24 inches and having that display built in is really nice, and it is very, very convenient. To get this same type of display, I'm assuming you're probably going to have to spend at least like $500 extra at the very least to get like a 24-inch LG ultra-fine 4K display, whatever that was. And maybe you can get that for $500 or $700, whatever it is nowadays. But that is but it's not an insane cost, but it is something that, you do have to consider when buying the Mac Studio. Another big thing to keep in mind is that with the Mac Studio, you are going to always pretty much have to have a display on hand, which is good and bad. It's bad because you have to spend more money, but you can interchange that display. Let's say today you buy a 32-inch display, and for some reason that display, is broken. Well, you can still utilize that Mac Studio by just going to get another display and replace it. So there's a little bit more modularity, I would say, with the Mac Studio, and especially with the M1 iMac. Again, with only 2 ports, if one of those ports go bad, you're only going to be getting the other one. Even on the 4-port option, things can happen. So that's why I always like having as many ports and as many options as possible. So that's, again, another thing to keep in mind. You also have more color options on the M1 iMac as well. So if you're somebody who likes to have a colorized setup, well, you can get a more colorized setup on something like the M1 iMac than on something like the Mac Studio. So again, that's another quite thing to keep in mind. And like I mentioned, interestingly enough, even though you're spending more money on the Mac Studio, these things do not come with a Magic Keyboard and they don't come with a Magic Mouse, which does kind of suck. You can go get the Magic Keyboard and Magic Mouse built into the box with the iMac, which is really nice. And again, I like having that capability, just, having those things built in, and it's very, very convenient. And that's kind of how the M1 iMac kind of boils down to me. It's a convenient machine. It's cheaper than the Mac Studio, which is nice. It comes with a display, it comes with a keyboard and mouse, so it is already there and it's already fully functioning. You just take it out of the box and that's it. With the Mac Studio, it is for the people who need more power. That's basically the best way to do it. You're giving up kind of a little bit more convenience up front and you're paying an upfront cost, but it is definitely worth the money. I do think the better value per dollar could be the M1 iMac for most people out there. I don't think you need as much power as the Mac Studio as you think, but if you are somebody like that, and if you're compiling a bunch of code, you're editing a bunch of 8K videos and all this crazy stuff, the Mac Studio is probably one of the best machines you can buy. And by all means, it is the most powerful machine, and I would recommend buying it if you have the money. But for someone like me, who just kind of edits videos every once in a while, I do some other things here and there, but for the most part, I don't really need a crazy powerful machine. The M1 iMac is more than capable enough for my use case, and the M1 chipset and the M1 chipset in general has been really good in my opinion. It's handled things perfectly fine for me. So I think overall, when it comes down to it, I would definitely say, get the Mac Studio if you want to, but I would recommend, if you're in the boat still, but if you're still like in the middle of the road kind of situation, I would kind of just buy the M1 iMac, use it for a couple days, see if that works out for you, and then, keep it if you want, or go and buy the Mac Studio if it's not as powerful as you would like it. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.